At the height of the Cold War, America's nuclear arsenal was distributed in many places across the country, not just on military bases and naval ships, but sometimes literally in backyards. A significant portion of that arsenal was made up of a missile called the Titan II. And if you know anything about this missile, it's probably the incident that took place near Damascus, Arkansas in 1980. This incident caused an explosion that sent a nuclear warhead sky high over Van Buren County and killed one airman. However, significantly fewer people know about an incident that took place in northern White County 15 years earlier that, while not as cinematic as launching a warhead, killed 53 civilian workers, the largest loss of life ever suffered in a U.S. nuclear weapons facility. Today we're going to talk about that incident. This is the Titan missile incident of 1965. Silo 373-4 was completed on July 31, 1962, and went on alert on May 16, 1963. 2 years later, a massive construction effort took place in the silos as part of Project Yard Fence. This was a modification program designed to facilitate maintenance, increase reliability, and improve hardiness against a nearby nuclear blast. What this really means is that there was work being done on the launch duct doors and hydraulics, as well as painting and installation of new material. Work as part of Project Yard Fence was done by civilian contractors, many of whom were locals, as well as folks from Mississippi, Alabama, Oklahoma, and other parts of the country. During the work, the missile remained in the silo, fully loaded with fuel and oxidizer, but the warhead was removed. Interestingly enough, on the day of the incident, the missile in the silo, number 62-0006, was also the one present in the silo during the incident at Damascus, which is honestly just spooky. Can missiles be cursed? That missile was definitely cursed. Anyway. In the afternoon of August 9th, 1965, the Air Force crew was in the control center while 55 civilian contractors worked on the launch duct. At 1:09 p.m., 17-year-old Gary Wayne Lay of Clinton was returning to work from lunch and stopped on level 2 to talk with around a dozen co-workers. Lay had worked at the silo the previous year, but this was his first day back on the site this summer, and he was catching up with many of the people he had worked with before. He was planning to enter college in September, with aspirations to play ball for the University of Arkansas. Lay was working construction jobs over the summer to earn money for college. However, fate had other plans today. As he was talking to his co-workers, Lay reported hearing a whoosh sound, like when a gas stove lights, and felt a rush of warm air. He turned to see flames directly behind him. The lights in the silo went out, and emergency lights came on. The group with Lay rushed for the emergency escape ladder. Seeing the crowd at the ladder, Lay realized he couldn't escape that way, and instead decided to take a chance running through the flames toward a cableway that led to the control center. As he fled, he heard men screaming and crying, "Help me, God, help me." When the fire began, 59-year-old Hubert A. Saunders of Conway had been painting on level 1, when he heard what he believed to be a diesel engine explode and smelled smoke. As someone who had worked on silos somewhat frequently, Saunders knew that his best chance of escape was through the cableway. He was known to be a cautious man who usually worked with his gas mask on or nearby, but he had no time to don his mask as he fled. He also reported hearing men calling for help. Thick smoke filled the pitch-black silo, far overpowering the emergency lights, causing Saunders and Lay to rely on their sense of touch to navigate the cableway and down it toward the command center. Meanwhile, in the launch control center, klaxons were sounding, indicating a fire in the silo. The airmen present contacted their headquarters at Little Rock Air Force Base. At 1:11, firefighters and equipment left the Air Force Base via helicopter. Supplies and people would continue to arrive at the site from 1:40 until 4:30. At the same time, Lay and Saunders entered the launch control center. Lay had third-degree burns on his hands and second-degree burns on his face. Saunders had fled so quickly that he was still carrying his paint can and brush and was suffering from mild smoke inhalation. Lay recalled being placed in a decontamination area and showered before being transported by ambulance to a hospital in Searcy. He called the 20-minute ride from the silo to the hospital the longest ride of his life, because of the intense pain that he was in. Air Force crews worked to put out a few small fires, but couldn't enter the duct. At 1:16, Master Sergeant Ronald Wallace and Airman First Class Donald Hastings donned air packs and tried to enter the silo, but the extreme heat and smoke were too much for their equipment. Having been informed of the situation at the silo, President Lyndon Johnson issued an order that every effort be made to locate the missing men. With the power out in the silo, the air conditioner in the facility was no longer functioning. As anyone who's lived through an August in Arkansas can tell you, that means things are getting warm. Unfortunately, the boiling point of the dinitrogen tetroxide oxidizer in the missile was 70 degrees. As middle school science may have taught you, boiled liquid becomes a gas, and heated gas expands. This means that, should the oxidizer begin to boil, the heated gas could expand beyond what the container could hold, causing a rupture, venting the highly flammable gas into the silo where there was potentially an open flame, which meant that a massive explosion could soon occur. At 6 p.m., an attempt was made to open the silo door to allow the launch duct to ventilate, but it failed to open. At 7:15, there was no fire visible on level 2, but smoke and fumes made other levels of the silo inaccessible. An hour later, a rescue team reached level 5 and found no survivors before they were forced to return for air. By 8:30, the rescuers had reached level 8 of the silo. By 10 p.m., the temperature in the silo maxed out at 80 degrees. Luckily, the amount of oxidizer present in the missile was low enough that a rupture never occurred. As night wore on, the temperature began to fall, averting the possibility of a larger accident occurring. At 10:40, the entire silo had been checked, and 53 fatalities were reported, and recovery of their bodies began, with the final workers' remains being removed at 5:30 a.m. on August 10th. The investigation determined that a welder working on level 3 had accidentally hit a hydraulic line with his welding rod, rupturing the hose and causing the spray of hydraulic fuel to catch fire. It was determined that the location being welded was basically inaccessible from level 3, causing the worker to approach from an awkward angle on level 2. Investigators reported discovering a fresh, unfinished weld near a ruptured hydraulic line on level 2. However, both Lay and Saunders claimed that there was no one welding at the time of the fire. Regardless, the investigation also found several additional causes and contributing factors to the mass casualty situation, including inadequate ventilation, lack of additional exits, lack of an independent power source for the elevator, escape plans only created with a 4-man crew in mind, blocked escape routes, haphazardly draped hydraulic flushing lines, lacking fire extinguishers, emergency lights that were too dim, unsecured hand tools, and workers carrying prohibited items, including cigarettes and lighters. It also found that no record had been made of which bodies came from where in the silo, which impeded the investigation. They also discovered that while each worker had been issued a face mask for use if a rocket propellant spill occurred, these masks offered no protection from smoke. It was determined that all but one of the men died from asphyxiation when the fire consumed all the oxygen present in the sealed silo. The final death occurred when a worker drowned in hydraulic fluid. A combination of the volatility of the fuel, aging seals, and spare parts no longer being manufactured led to the decommissioning of the Titan II starting in 1982. On February 18, 1987, Launch Complex 373-4 went off alert for good. 3 months later, on May 9, 1987, the last active silo in the United States, LC 373-8 near Judsonia, was deactivated, and the Titan II program finally came to an end. The missiles themselves were all scrapped by 2009. On August 9, 1986, more than 400 people attended a ceremony to dedicate a memorial to the 53 workers killed. The 7-foot-tall granite monument is engraved with the names of those killed. It was placed near the entrance to the Little Rock Air Force Base and was paid for by private funds raised by the daughter of one of the victims. Today, the monument is located at the Jacksonville Museum of Military History. A small metal plaque and granite marker are located at the intersection of Arkansas Highway 305 and Snowden Road south of Penguin. For many years, Lay didn't talk about the incident. He says that one of the hardest things he's ever done was to face the families of the victims, questioning why he survived and 53 others never came back from work, including all the men he was speaking with when the fire began. Today, over 50 years later, the incident at Launch Complex 373-4 remains the largest loss of life ever suffered in a U.S. nuclear weapons facility. It is undeniably one of the greatest tragedies to take place in Arkansas, but also a forgotten piece of the state's history. Usually, it's mentioned as little more than a footnote in the story of the much more dramatic incident at Damascus. However, for those in the area and those who lost friends and relatives on that August day, it will never be forgotten. This is Mapstro. Thank you for watching. To learn more about the Titan II missile program in Arkansas and the incident at Silo 373-4, check out my podcast, linked in the description below.